When Sarah inherited her grandmother's old cabin in the woods of Hollow Creek, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. As a child, she spent many summers there, but after her grandmother's passing, the cabin had been abandoned for years. The locals whispered tales of strange happenings around Hollow Creek, especially after dark, but Sarah had never paid much attention. Determined to restore the cabin, she arrived one chilly afternoon. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine surrounded her as she made her way up the overgrown path. The cabin stood stoically, its weathered wood and faded paint telling stories of time. As she stepped inside, dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Memories flooded back. Family gatherings, laughter, the warmth of her grandmother's presence. As night fell, Sarah settled into the cabin, lighting a fire in the old stone fireplace. With a blanket wrapped around her, she began to go through her grandmother's belongings. Among the treasures, she found an intricately carved lantern, its glass panels adorned with swirling patterns. Intrigued, she decided to clean it up and see if it still worked. After polishing the glass, Sarah placed a candle inside and lit it. The warm glow filled the room, casting flickering shadows on the walls. As the fire crackled, she felt a strange sense of comfort, but also an unsettling feeling that something was watching her. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, she heard a faint rustling outside the cabin. Initially, she dismissed it as the wind or perhaps a critter, but the sound persisted, growing closer. Curiosity piqued, Sarah grabbed the lantern and stepped outside to investigate. The moonlight illuminated the forest, revealing towering trees and the glimmer of stars above. The air was still, but the rustling continued, coming from the direction of the creek. Holding the lantern high, she ventured cautiously toward the sound. As she approached the water's edge, the rustling ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. She peered into the darkness, trying to make out any shapes, but the night was unyielding. Suddenly, the lantern flickered, and the shadows danced around her, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Just then, she saw it. A faint figure standing near the creek, barely illuminated by her lantern's glow. It was a woman, her long hair flowing like a river of darkness, her dress tattered and worn. The woman seemed to be beckoning her, and despite every instinct screaming at her to turn back, Sarah felt compelled to approach. "Hello?" Sarah called, her voice shaky. The woman didn't respond, merely continued to gesture for her to come closer. As Sarah took a tentative step forward, the lantern flickered again, and the woman's face became clearer. She was beautiful, yet haunting, her eyes dark and sorrowful, filled with an unfathomable sadness. "Help me," the woman whispered, her voice a mere breath on the wind. "Help you? How?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "What do you need?" The woman pointed toward the water, her gaze piercing. Sarah hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. But there was a strange pull, an urge to assist this lost soul. As Sarah reached the creek, she noticed something glimmering beneath the surface. She knelt down, peering into the water, and gasped. There, tangled in the weeds, lay an old locket. It shone like silver in the moonlight, its intricate design reminiscent of the lantern. "Is this what you want?" Sarah asked, her heart pounding as she reached for the locket. The moment her fingers brushed against it, a cold wind swept through the clearing, and the woman's expression shifted from hope to despair. "Beware," the woman warned, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "Do not disturb what rests." But before Sarah could respond, the woman faded into the darkness, leaving only the sound of the rustling trees. Confused and shaken, Sarah pulled the locket free, feeling its cold metal against her skin. She held it up to the light, but before she could examine it, the lantern flickered once more, plunging her into darkness. Panicking, Sarah scrambled to her feet and turned to head back toward the cabin, but the path seemed different now, twisted and unfamiliar. The trees loomed larger, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "Get back!" she shouted, feeling a primal fear grip her. The woods seemed to whisper, a cacophony of voices urging her to leave. Suddenly, the lantern flickered back to life, illuminating the path ahead. Sarah stumbled forward, her heart racing, until she burst into the clearing where the cabin stood. She slammed the door behind her, breathing heavily as she leaned against it, the locket clutched tightly in her hand. The next morning, Sarah awoke to sunlight filtering through the windows, the events of the night feeling like a strange dream. She glanced at the locket on the table, its presence unnerving yet magnetic. Determined to uncover the truth, she went into town, asking the locals about the woman by the creek. Their expressions turned grave. Whispers of a tragedy long forgotten passed between them. Eleanor Waverly, they told her, had drowned in the creek over a century ago. Her spirit was said to linger, searching for her lost locket, a key to her eternal rest. That night, Sarah found herself drawn back to the creek, the locket in hand. The moon hung low, casting a silvery light over the water. She knelt by the edge, heart pounding, and spoke into the night. "I found your locket. I'm here to help you." As the words left her lips, a calm fell over the woods. The water shimmered, and from the depths emerged a figure, luminous and ethereal. It was Eleanor, her sadness replaced with a serene expression. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like a breeze. "You have freed me." With that, Eleanor reached for the locket, which floated from Sarah's palm into the water. As it touched the surface, the air shimmered, and a wave of warmth enveloped the clearing. The figure of Eleanor began to fade, a look of peace washing over her face. "Remember me," she said softly, before disappearing completely. As silence settled over Hollow Creek, Sarah felt a weight lift from her heart. She had not only helped a lost soul find peace, but also uncovered the truth behind the stories that had haunted the woods for so long. From that night on, she kept the lantern lit, a tribute to Eleanor and a reminder that some spirits, once bound by sorrow, could finally find their way home.